am narrating this from the bridge of the relentless tide, 11 minutes after the galaxy changed. Outside my viewport, the last of the Drevathi warships are pulling back into formation. Not charging, not firing, just watching us, the way you watch something you have decided not to touch again. My crew is doing what my crew always does after a fight, checking systems, cracking quiet jokes, and eating whatever they pulled from the mess hall before the shooting started. Tomek has a sandwich. He made it during the second wave. I do not know how. I have stopped asking. Let me take you back to where it started, because 11 minutes ago is not really where this story begins. This story begins with 4.3 seconds of sound. I have been a UEF fleet commander for 9 years, and in that time, I have learned that the galaxy has a very specific feeling about humanity. It is not hatred. It is not admiration, at least not yet. It is the particular feeling you get when you find something in a museum exhibit that should not logically exist. That confused, slightly unsettled sensation of standing in front of evidence that breaks the rules you thought were permanent. The Kethari call us the oxygen breathers from the gravity well. The Drevathi, before today, called us the soft ones, which tells you exactly how prepared they were for what happened. Most spacefaring civilizations evolved on planets that were more or less polite to them. Reasonable temperatures, calm weather patterns, nothing too large trying to eat them on a regular basis. Earth tried to kill us every single day for 4 million years, and we responded by getting faster, stronger, more stubborn, and then, eventually, curious enough to leave. The galaxy has not entirely recovered from learning that last part. I grew up in the highlands of Nigeria, where the rains come sideways, and the sun at midday feels like a physical argument. My body, by galactic medical standards, is an anomaly. My bones are dense enough to confuse alien scanners. My blood pressure, which my doctor on Earth told me was a little high, would be considered a crisis state for 6 of the 12 major spacefaring species. I am not exceptional among humans. I am simply human. This matters, because the night the signal came in, the Drevathi were operating on the assumption that we were fragile. The SOS hit our long-range array at 0214 ship time, 4.3 seconds. Standard galactic distress encoding, origin marked as the Kethari colony on Vale Prime, a planet about the size of Mars, home to roughly 400,000 crystalline beings who had been living quietly and building beautiful things for the better part of 3,000 years. Meridian, my ship's intelligence, translated the content in 11 seconds, and put the summary on my screen with the calm efficiency it uses for everything, including news I find alarming. Drevathi siege fleet, 16 vessels confirmed. Kethari evacuation, approximately 23% complete. Civilian casualties ongoing. Probability of colony survival without intervention, 2.1%. Probability of colony survival with UEF intervention, currently unquantifiable. Insufficient data on combined force engagement scenarios involving human-crewed vessels against Drevathi formation tactics. I appreciated the honesty. Meridian has learned, over our years together, to stop trying to model human outcomes too precisely. It always notes the gap between its predictions and our actual results, with something that, if it were capable of feelings, I might call embarrassment. I sent the emergency request back to Earth Command at 02116. We were already moving by 0217. Protocol says to wait for confirmation. Protocol is a good thing, and I respect it enormously. But 400,000 people were dying while the confirmation was being processed, and I come from a planet where you do not wait to help someone who is screaming. The confirmation came through at 0231. By then, we were already 4 minutes into our jump sequence. Earth Command's message said, simply, 17 vessels en route. Hold position. Hold nothing else. That is the thing about humanity, that the galaxy keeps underestimating. We do not wait. We also do not go alone. The jump signatures bloomed on our scope like flowers opening in fast forward. 17 points of light, each one a UEF vessel dropping out of transit space and arranging itself into formation with the quiet efficiency of people who have practiced this. Survey ships, escort frigates, 2 science vessels that had been converted so thoroughly for military use that their original function was now mostly a memory, and at the back of the formation, the 3 dreadnoughts. The dreadnoughts are not subtle. They are not meant to be. I watched the Kethari command channel go silent for 22 seconds when they appeared on their scopes. Then someone on their end said something in their native harmonic language that Meridian translated as approximately, "They actually came." On the Drevathi side, Admiral Ruksar was receiving intelligence reports about us. I know this because we were listening. His tactical officer described human physiology for approximately 4 minutes, citing our bone density, our atmospheric requirements, our radiation tolerance, all the ways that Earth's hostility had shaped us into something that does not quite fit the standard categories. Ruksar's response, when his officer finished, was a single question: are they aware of our numbers? He had 31 confirmed victories. He had never lost a siege. He had never encountered a species that had evolved on a planet that was actively trying to end them. We dropped out of FTL inside the Drevathi siege perimeter, not outside it. This is a tactical decision that most spacefaring commanders would call reckless, and they are not entirely wrong. We call it establishing presence, which is a more diplomatic way of saying that we wanted Ruksar to understand, before a single weapon was fired, that the distances he was using to feel safe were not going to be the distances that applied to this engagement. The Drevathi fleet turned as one. 64 warships, all pointing at 17 UEF vessels. The math was not in our favor by any conventional measurement. I could hear Meridian running calculations in the background of my awareness, the gentle processing hum that means it is finding the numbers uncomfortable. Tomek was not finding the numbers uncomfortable. Tomek was grinning. Ruksar opened a channel himself, which told me he was interested in information before he was interested in a fight. I respected that. He was older than I expected, angular, deep-voiced, with the kind of steadiness that comes from decades of commanding things that were obeyed. He asked me, in calm and reasonable galactic standard, whether I understood the tactical situation. I told him that I understood it very well. I told him that I was more interested in whether he understood ours. He was not impressed. Not yet. I asked Tomek to fire a ranging shot, not at the enemy, at an uninhabited asteroid 17,000 kilometers off our port side. The round left our railgun at a velocity that I will not specify because it remains classified, and it hit the asteroid with an explosive yield that caused Meridian to note, in its even tone, that the Drevathi flagship had just increased its shield output by 40%. A vessel our size should not be able to fire a round like that. A vessel our size was designed by engineers from a planet where the baseline assumption is that the environment is trying to destroy you, and you build accordingly. Ruksar went quiet for 31 seconds. Then he asked for a second channel. The Kethari ambassador, Vail Shii, came aboard while negotiations were technically still ongoing. He was everything the intelligence reports had described: tall, crystalline, moving with that particular grace that beings with a 400-year lifespan tend to develop because they have had 400 years to practice it. He stepped onto the bridge of the relentless tide, expecting something cold and military, and found, instead, my crew. Tomek offered him food. Vail Shii could not eat it. Kethari do not process organic compounds in that way. But Tomek offered it anyway, because offering food to someone who has just survived a siege is something he does reflexively, the way breathing is reflexive. Dr. Solberg was at her station writing notes and occasionally laughing at something on her secondary screen. 3 of the junior crew members waved at Vail Shii when they passed him in the corridor. He stood in the middle of all of this and looked, I thought, more frightened than he had been of the Drevathi. He came to my ready room and told me to stand down. He was not unkind about it. He was scared, genuinely scared, not of what Ruksar would do, but of what we might do. And he dressed it up as diplomacy, because he was a diplomat, and that was the only tool he trusted. He told me that the Kethari did not want a war. He told me that the cost of what I was doing could be catastrophic. He told me he had spent 40 years studying humans from a respectful distance, and he was not sure, looking at us now, that the distance had been quite far enough. I told him that we agreed entirely, that we also did not want a war, that we wanted his people alive, that for humans, those things were not contradictions. He looked at me for a long time and did not have an answer for that. Negotiations ended when the Drevathi siege weapons armed. Meridian told me in the same voice it uses for everything. Tomek was already at his station. The crew moved the way they always move when the situation becomes simple, which is to say, very fast, very quietly, and with the particular focus of people who evolved in an environment where hesitation was fatal. The drevathi had a strategy. It was a good strategy, built on 31 successful campaigns, calibrated for opponents who had limits that could be measured and accounted for. They were heavier than us. They were more numerous than us. They expected us to fight like beings who understood that pain meant stopping. We did not fight like that. I will not dress up what happened next, in language that makes it sound like something other than what it was. We were outnumbered, and we fought anyway, the way humans have always fought when the math was against us, and the reason was right. My ships moved in patterns that Ruksar's tactical models had not predicted, because those models were built on the assumption that self-preservation would limit our options. We do not remove self-preservation from our calculations. We simply weigh it differently. When a drevathi boarding party breached our hull, which is a tactic that has ended battles for them before, the psychological weight of soldiers inside your ship, they came through into a pressurized corridor and met 6 of my crew in close quarters gear, moving through a space they knew, and the intruders did not, in conditions that humans are very comfortable in, and drevathi are not. I patched the corridor feed to Veil Shi by accident. He watched for 7 seconds and then looked away from the screen. Dr. Solberg later told me that, biologically speaking, humans in close quarters combat are operating on instincts that predate civilization by several million years. She said it the way she says most things, cheerfully, like someone who finds the information interesting rather than alarming. The drevathi fleet did not break because we destroyed them. We did not destroy them. I want to be clear about that, because the story that will circulate, the version that neutral observers will tell across 40 systems, will probably suggest otherwise. What actually happened was that Ruksar watched the engagement for long enough to understand that his model was wrong. He was a being who had survived 31 campaigns by knowing when a situation had changed. He opened a channel. He said one word in galactic standard terms. There is a casualty report open on my screen as I write this. I have read it 4 times. There are names on it that I knew, people who came out here with me, who ate in the same mess hall and complained about the same recycled coffee, and laughed at Tomek's jokes, and now are not on this ship anymore. Victory does not erase that. It never does. And I think anyone who tells you otherwise has not actually been in one. We won. We are glad we won. We carry the cost of it the way you carry everything that matters. Close and heavy and permanent. The ceasefire negotiations took 3 hours. Veil Shi spoke for the Kethari. Ruksar, to his credit, negotiated in genuine good faith. He was a being who had learned something, and he was honest about having learned it. The terms were not perfect. They held. Meridian compiled the reaction data from neutral systems after the engagement closed. 17 requests for bilateral defense discussions with Earth, filed within 48 hours. A classified drevathi Admiralty review of what their intelligence services had missed about human physiology. And from the Kethari Cultural Archive, already being assembled, the beginning of the account that would eventually reach every inhabited system in this part of the galaxy. Their word for us, Meridian could only approximate it in standard, translated most accurately as the ones who came. Veil Shi visited me one last time before we departed. He stood in my ready room and looked at the viewport for a while, at the stars that humans have been reaching toward for less time than his civilization has been keeping records. He asked me how we lived with it, not the war, the everything. The planet we came from, the weight of what we carry in these bodies, the casual way we move through danger that would stop other beings completely. I told him about Earth, about the storms that cross entire oceans, about the creatures in the deep water that have never seen sunlight, about the volcanoes and the cold and the ordinary, daily hostility of a planet that did not make anything easy for the things that lived on it. I told him that we looked up from all of that and decided to go see what was out there, because that is what we do. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said he was glad we did. I am still on the bridge. Tomek has finished his sandwich. Meridian is running updated probability models, which now include a new variable it has labeled Human Deviation Index. Its polite way of acknowledging that it has stopped trying to predict us precisely and started building in room for what we actually do. The drevathi fleet is gone from my scope. The Kethari colony is still standing. Someone sent a signal into the dark, 4.3 seconds long, and we came. That is the whole story, really. Every complicated, costly, remarkable thing that happened after it fits inside that one simple fact. Someone called, so we came.